Ephesians chapter 2. I'm going to read this passage again about salvation and this summary that Paul gives that has taken us so far 4 weeks to get through 3 verses. And so I think we're gonna get a little further tonight because some of these larger themes Paul starts to talk about that are bridging one verse to the next. And so let's start back at verse 1. We'll go down to verse 10 again. It says, "As for you, you were dead in your transgressions and sins, in which you used to live when you followed the ways of this world and the ruler of the kingdom of the air, the spirit who is now at work in those who are disobedient. All of us also lived among them at one time, gratifying the cravings of our flesh and following its desires and thoughts. Like the rest, we were by nature deserving of wrath. But because of his great love for us, God, who is rich in mercy, made us alive with Christ, even when we were dead in transgressions. It is by grace you have been saved. And God raised us up with Christ and seated us with him in the heavenly realms in Christ Jesus, in order that in the coming ages he might show the incomparable riches of his grace, expressed in his kindness to us in Christ Jesus. For it is by grace you have been saved through faith. This is not from yourselves. It is the gift of God, not by works, so that no one can boast. For we are God's handiwork, created in Christ Jesus to do good works, which God prepared in advance for us to do." As I read that, I noticed again how many times it says in Christ. Did you pick that up? Just over and over again. And especially when we get to the part where he talks about he has made us alive with Christ, we're going to start talking about that there is this theological principle that Paul is alluding to about being with Christ or in Christ. What does that mean for us, and how is it described in Scripture, both in Colossians and in Romans 6 and here in Ephesians 2? But let's kind of go back and review. We talked last week and we kind of finished up the topic about our lostness, the lostness of this world and our lostness before salvation. Some of that remains with us, and some of it is the battle that we do. Spirit versus this term we call flesh. Some versions use sinful nature. It's trying to describe this human part of us that is bent towards what is wrong, what is rebellious against God. Every single person is born by nature this way. And so it says we were following this flesh. We talked last week that there is flesh that is good looking and flesh that is bad looking. So I want just to start off tonight by asking you to think with me out loud about what is flesh that is. Let's start off with flesh that looks bad. It's easy to tell this is sinful, messy flesh. What kind of things do people tend towards? They have a penchant towards. It's the way that they process the world, and it is messy, bad, easy to spot as sinful flesh. What kind of stuff do we see from that? Okay? Attitude. It's interesting how often in the New Testament Paul talks about don't do anything with murmuring or complaining. Wouldn't it be nice if we put as much emphasis on that as we do on homosexuality or something? That's as clear of a command for Christians, but that's that's no big deal. I mean, people are annoying, so I have to murmur and complain. There's nothing I can do about it, right? Right, good, great example. Self-centeredness. I am the point of everything. And when you talk about flesh, you also talk about sometimes this special talent that people have. I don't know if you've ever interacted with people like this. Maybe if you haven't, you're one of them. They have this special talent that when something is being told or said and it's not about you, you make it about you. Have you talked to people who have this ability? You're like, how did you make that about you? That was really wow. I mean, slow clap. That was wow. Self-centered. That everything in life is about how it affects me, how I feel about it, what I think about it. Ugly flesh is selfish flesh, for sure. What else? Other ideas. Just easy to see, sinful, dirty flesh. Murder, violence, hurting other people, taking someone else's life, that's easy to see. That is, selfish, but it's also believing in my own strength and taking something that I don't have the right to take, putting myself in a position of God or superior, that I have the right to exist and you don't have the right to exist. Easy to see. What else? Judging people, looking down at people. So a lot of that starts with pride, thinking that I'm better, higher, looking down at people. Other thoughts? Jealousy. Yeah. And it's interesting in the Word of God that jealousy is used for God sometimes. So clearly it means something different in that context. But when we use it about people and we use it about that ugly thing, it is this, I should have that. That's mine. And even though I don't have the right to it, because I feel like it would bring pleasure or joy or comfort to me, I should have it. It is an outcropping of selfishness for sure.
Well, it sounds like we're dancing around it, but it sounds like these are, sounds like we're dancing around it, but it sounds like all of these are really the Ten Commandments. And when we, in our flesh, these are the things that we covet. These are the things we kill. We're violent, whatever it may be. Yeah. And when we become that base human person, then we're not elevated to the level of being able to communicate with God or search out God.
Yeah, the Ten Commandments, obviously God is brilliant. And so he sums up this way in the Ten Commandments of us to be able to see, this is easy to see that we mess up. There's not any person that you will ever meet that hasn't broken probably all, if not many, of the Ten Commandments. It is a very simple way for us to see we fall short. That, don't lie, don't steal, don't commit adultery, don't covet, don't dishonor your parents. Very easy to see we mess up all the time. And so crossing those lines tells us we can easily know that our flesh has a problem. And that problem goes on and on and on. And in our world today, do we see that everything seems to be bent, somehow twisted, every good thing even, twisted toward what is evil, selfish, proud, judgmental, harsh, violent. Not universally, it's not like every single person is violent, but every single part of our world constantly takes the good and bends it. Even in my own life, the good that I might do, the way that I follow God, my flesh wants to rise up in me and bend it towards self-centeredness, towards pride, towards wanting what I don't have and coveting somebody else's thing. Like, all of that in me comes out of flesh. And so all of us know what it is to have that ugly, sinful flesh. But we also have good flesh, good-looking flesh. It's what we would call camouflaged sinfulness. It is flesh that is still human. My hope, like my bad flesh, my sinful, messy, yucky flesh, it's easy to see that I am putting my hope for a good life or fulfillment, pleasure, a desirable future security in stuff that I shouldn't. It's awful, yucky, horrible. Greed, stealing. Oh, if I could get enough money, then I'll have a happy life. Easy to see that you're putting your hope in. But there are also many patterns of very good-looking flesh. So, and that means it's harder to see that this is sinful, because on the face of it, what you're doing is good, but it's coming from your flesh. So maybe that's a new concept to you, but if it isn't, help me think, what kind of good-looking flesh do we see around us in the world? My hope is in human strength, human wisdom, human understanding, but it looks good, and it looks even maybe spiritual, it looks moral to the world around me, but it's just as dead inside. Charlie? Self-righteousness is a great example. And when you go through the Gospels, who is Jesus really hard on? Pharisees, for self-righteous. They took pride and felt themselves superior, and no one could throw a stone at them because they were literally keeping the law verse by verse. And they were judging other people who weren't keeping the law. So it was like this God-given code, and they were turning it from what God gave it for to show us our need for faith and the sacrificial system and all that stuff. They almost thought of themselves as though they didn't need the sacrificial system. I mean, they did it because that's what we're supposed to do. But it's not really about me being sinful because I've very much kept the law. One of them came to Jesus one day and said, I've kept the whole thing from my youth. Remember that guy? And Jesus said, he said, yes, I see that you have, and one thing you lack. And the man said, what? Go sell all that you have and give it to the poor and come follow me. And the Bible says he went away very sad because he had great possessions. Interesting that he comes to Jesus to get a stamp of approval from Jesus, but he doesn't actually want to follow Jesus. Isn't that interesting? This is the definition of self-righteous. We come to Jesus when we'd like the sacred blessing or the sprinkle of God's favor on us, the approval, the stamp of approval, give me the gold star, I'm doing everything right, right? And then go out, but I want to go live my own life. I want to have my own resources. I need my money. I'm not giving it to the poor. I'm not abandoning my life to follow you. I wanted you to tell me I'm good. And Jesus said, no, I want to show you that your flesh is still in charge. Even though you've done good, you've done it out of flesh and not out of a way that is saving. And the way that he exposed that was that. So self-righteousness is really a huge, huge one. And it's the thing that pervades church a lot of times. Self-righteousness. It's how when someone comes in, it's why the church gets a reputation for being judgmental. Because when someone comes in, our self-righteousness, and make no mistake about it, our self-righteousness is what looks across at someone else and says, how could they do that? Why would they be here doing that? Why isn't someone saying something to them? That is self-righteous. And from what we're reading here, what we don't need is pride. What Paul says we need is mercy. Because of his great love, God, who is rich in mercy. Those who have received great mercy understand I have no place to look around and say, what's wrong with you? I already know what's wrong with you. Same thing that's wrong with me. I need a Savior, you need a Savior. So that self-righteous thing, it dresses itself up, it knows Bible verses, it prays great prayers, it comes to church all the time, it makes sure everybody sees me doing these things, and it feels very good about myself. I'm better than other people because I do a lot of good things. It doesn't have to be in church. There are a lot of self-righteous heathens. Right? We hear a lot about them in politics. They are, oh, we're going to save the planet. Oh, we're going to feed the poor. Oh, and there's nothing wrong with those things, but the problem is their hope is in being a good person. And they can define themselves as a good person, but the weight that they put on my good deeds, it is good flesh, and it does no different than the bad flesh. It's just a trickier way that the enemy keeps people trapped. Because if I went to witness to them and I said to them, hey, listen, you're a sinner. No, I don't think I am. I mean, I'm not a bad sinner like Hitler and, bad people. I'm a good person. I mean, I mess up here and there, but most of what I do in my life is good. I do things for other people. And isn't that what Jesus said? Good flesh tells you the same thing that bad flesh tells you. You don't want a Savior. You don't need a Savior. You can be your own Savior. You'll have a better life without the Savior. That's what flesh does. And Christians, we still have flesh. So that flesh does the same thing to us. I don't want him. I don't need him. I would be better off determining my own life, going my own way, carrying my own weight, making my own decisions. And I would love it if he would give me the thumbs up on it. But even if he doesn't, I still believe in this. That's what flesh does. And so Paul starts this off talking about that is how we are born. We were by nature deserving of wrath, that inborn sinfulness. And one of the things that does for us as Christians, that helps us understand the world in which we live and the flesh in which we live. It helps me understand the battle that I have. I have a battle with my flesh all the time. How about you? It doesn't mean you should be discouraged and wave the white flag and something's wrong with me and I'm defective and what's the problem with, we have flesh and it's always going to try to outflank every spiritual move that I make. It's always going to try to outflank it and shut it down all the time. Right? So that flesh is a battle in me. So it helps me understand my walk. But as I look at the world around me, it helps me understand why this world constantly turns away from what is good to what is self-interest, what is self-advancing. It gains me power. It gains me money. It gains me control. It gains me security. Whatever. It's why someone worries. That's a flesh thing. You know that, right? Why do we worry? Well, I care too much not to worry. And worrying means I care. It means at least I can do something about it. At least I can worry about it. I have to keep it on my mind, because if I don't keep it on my mind, what? You kind of have this unsaid thing. At least if I'm worrying about it, I know about it and I'm doing something about it. And people will know that I care about it. But the fruit of it is anxiety, panic attacks, depression, weariness. This is not the fruit of the Spirit of God. It's the fruit of putting trust in your flesh. So there are battle lines like that. But then, there are battle lines in the world around us and any good thing. How many charities that are there to help people have turned into a cash grab for the person in charge? Do you think that they all started out nefarious? They all started out with this evil intent. I'm just going to use this as a... Most of them start out with this good thing. And then they see all this money and they look at some need in their life and they're like, I could use that money. And I'm doing a lot of good. And they kind of justify it. And that pull. And they find themselves down in this pit where they've done all kinds of illegal things and now they've got all kinds of explaining to do. How did they get there? The flesh. The flesh. It helps us understand the world around us. Anything that we put our faith in. It's why in church, the flesh is still all around us in church. The difference for us as believers, we have the power of the Spirit in us. And we can all choose to walk in the power of the Spirit. But we have to acknowledge the power of the flesh. So the power of the flesh has to be mitigated by the fact that we are together, we are accountable, we are open with one another, so that we seek the Spirit together. It's why we do things in teams as a church, because we are less susceptible with a bunch of us than just one of us. It's why we do things in teams. And it's why we believe in things like small group, where it's hard to hide, because hiding is one of the flesh's weapons to keep you stuck. So small group, get into small group, pray for one another, share with one another, learn together, help each other. There you are, know and be known in small group because of this battle with the flesh. All right, so that's all review, which is a lot of review, but let's keep going. Verse 4, but because of his great love for us, God, who is rich in mercy, made us alive with Christ even when we were dead in transgressions. It is by grace you have been saved. So this main point, and this is the thing tonight that I think you got to take with you, because this is where Paul, all of that was set up to this. This moment right here that Paul is at, and Paul comes back to it a couple times in the verses we read. This moment is what Paul is about in this whole book so far. But God. That the Greek, the actual emphasis in the Greek is but God. The verse starts off, but God. It's a transition from all of our mess, but God. And the point is, here comes the hero. Here comes the one to save us. Not because we earned it, not because we deserve it, but because of who he is. That's the point. But God showed up. And the picture is almost like there is this world that you and I see as we look out at the world that just churns in evil. And any good thing can be perverted to bad. And then we look at our own lives and we see the battle in us that we always seem to have this gravity towards what is wrong, towards what is selfish, towards what is fleshly. All of us. Here's the good news. This is the gospel. God will not be held back. He charges into the mess again and again and again and again. The book of Revelation says there is a time when the world gets really, really dark. And what does God do? Same thing he always does. God charges into the mess to save those who put their trust in him. Isn't that awesome? Aren't you glad? We just read for 3 or 4 weeks here about the mess that we were in, and that many billions of people in this world right now live in that mess. But God charges in. He has every reason to stay put, but he will not stay out of the picture. He intrudes into our dead and enslaved existence. That is the character of God. And that is Paul's point in this. I want you to see who God is, and I want you to see who he is by looking at how he saves us. But God. And so when we look at God as this man, as this person who intrudes into darkness, who intrudes into lostness, who will not be held back, but because of his love, because of his mercy, charges in. I wonder, think with me, why don't people think that about God? Because the story of the Word of God, the story of Christ being born, and Christmas we celebrate every year, and Easter we celebrate, and everybody celebrates it. How do we miss that that's who God is? Because people have different ideas about God than that, don't they? So how do we miss that point about God's character when salvation is so clear, Jesus' arrival and death and resurrection are so clear? How do we, Christians, and how do so many people in this world miss who God is? That God is a God who cares enough about lost people to come charging in at his own expense to rescue the undeserved. How do we miss that? What do you think?
I think guilt has a lot to do with it.
Okay.
We feel guilty and we wouldn't forgive ourselves sometimes, but so we can't understand how a perfect God could forgive us.
Yeah. That's a great point, Tom, because you know that feeling in your own life, don't you? I blew it, and here's the consequences around me. I don't know if I can forgive me. Some of us carry guilt and shame as a way to make up for our failings. We feel like when we suffer enough, then maybe we'll be redeemed. As though guilt is going to save us. I can't just let myself off the hook. I can't just be forgiven. I mean, I really blew it. It's really bad. I should suffer. I should be sad. I should be sorrowful. I should pay for this. You've forgotten that that's not the payment. Guilt isn't the payment. And so, great point. Some of the reason that we cannot picture God as who he is because we aren't that. And when God says he is rich in mercy, we're not rich in mercy. And so it's hard for us to get our heads around a God who is. Great point.
I think in many ways, obviously, it's written a few years ago,
Yeah.
that it's still true today in the sense is that we are still dead.
Yeah.
And the fact that we don't have the knowledge of God. And that as we search for that knowledge, we become better, we become closer. But it's because of our flesh, because of what we are,
Yeah.
that, yeah, okay, we celebrate Christmas, but, it's just a great time when Santa Claus comes.
Yeah.
It's, Easter, yeah, the Easter bunny comes. It's not, it's people have gotten away from why
Right.
and what the importance is of it,
Yeah.
and they forget, and it becomes, like I said, it becomes a lack of knowledge
Yeah.
rather than the striving for the understanding.
In our world, Jesus uses this term again and again. They are blind. They don't see. Their minds are clouded. Their vision is clouded. They don't get it because they don't get it. They don't see. Maybe willful. It may be distracted. Talking about Christmas or whatever. Maybe distracted to other things and just assuming. Or it's the wisdom of man, the conversations that happen in universities about how clearly the Bible isn't true and was written centuries later and was made by man, and what even in the face of clear evidence that the Bible predates a lot of what they're trying to say. I don't know if you've ever realized this before or not, but I'll just throw a fact at you that if you're ever challenged about, the New Testament was written later, like, anybody ever hear this? The New Testament was written like 300, 400. That's when they finally decided what would be in the Bible and what wouldn't be in the Bible. And they kind of formed the Bible around a religion. That's when Christianity was established. Before that, there wasn't really Christianity. It was all these different ideas, and they kind of made it one idea there. And the point that they try to make is that Gospels like Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and John were written much, much later instead of in the first century. In every Gospel, there are a few things that are in every Gospel. Feeding of the 5,000, there's the death and resurrection. There are a few things that are in every Gospel. One of the things that is in every Gospel is that Jesus predicted not only his own death, but the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem. Specifically, every stone here will be, there won't be one stone standing upon another, is what Jesus said. This will all be torn down. And he said it at a time when Herod either just finished or was finishing this magnificent temple. It was brand new. It was either they're still laying stones, or they just finished laying stones to make this giant. And Jesus says, this is going to be gone. Every gospel. Do you know when that happened? 70 AD. There's no doubt about it. General Titus came in and destroyed Jerusalem and tore, because the Israelites, because they were so obstinate, he decided, instead of just coming in and taking over, he decided the only thing I can do to teach them a lesson is to destroy their place of worship completely. And he tore it down stone from stone, 70 AD. First century, 70 AD. If the Gospels were written later, 150 AD, 200 AD, 300, don't you think that's something that you would have pointed out? Somebody would have said, Jesus said this, and he was right. Right? You know how many Gospels say that? None. It is strong literary evidence that all of them were written before 70 AD. Because not one of them say, oh, Jesus said the temple would be torn down. Everybody laughed at him, but guess what? Jesus was right. Nobody does. As a matter of fact, nobody in the New Testament says that. Suggesting very strongly that the whole New Testament is written before 70 AD. We think the Gospel of John was written maybe a little bit later than that, 90 AD or something like that, but the rest of the New Testament we think was written 50s and 60s before the temple was destroyed. How about that? It's a little side note for you. If you ever get up against somebody who's like the Bible's all made up, just tuck that away. Because those are historical facts. And it asks someone to make a judgment for themselves instead of parroting what somebody else said. Say, listen, read the Gospels. You'll see it in every Gospel. Jesus says this temple is going down. But you'll see for yourself, nobody says, and it did. But we know it did. And we know he was right. Because in 70 AD it came down. What do you think of that? What do you make of that? You can ask them. Put them back there. All right. So this point about God's character, people are blind and they don't see it. They don't get it because their minds are clouded. What else? Any other ideas why people miss this characteristic of God?
I think it's because we truly lack the understanding of the nature of God, like mercy and grace, those
Yeah.
words. We understand those definitions, but who of us would give to someone that deserves death, give them more and more and more? We
Yeah.
wouldn't, in our
Yeah.
nature. And the same thing, we just wouldn't forgive 70 times 7. We won't, you get one chance and that's it, all right, get out. You
Yeah.
know what I mean?
Yep.
So we can't comprehend the infinite part of him having a constant amount of mercy that is constantly replenished for him and
Yeah.
continues to come. We can't fathom that.
Yeah.
And I think that makes it difficult to connect
Yeah.
with the nature.
When God blows your mind, you have to choose what you're going to do with that. And a lot of people say, well, that it can't be true. If I can't understand it, if I can't get my head around it, it must not be true. But we're presented with things in Scripture here many times, even in this passage, where it says, I want you to know that this is unknowable. This is more than you could imagine, more you can come up with. This thing about God is so big, you'll never understand it. You just need to know it's there. We got to decide if we believe that or if we need to understand it in order to believe. And I think for the world, that's a huge challenge, because why would I just believe it? I need to understand it in order to believe it. But for Christians, it is a legitimate choice. Am I going to believe what God has revealed from saving my soul, or am I going to demand to understand it in order for it to be true? Good. Lana, you had something?
I was going to say, I agree with what everybody said so far, and also I think it's the flesh itself, the self part of that, the idea that I know myself better than God does.
Yeah.
I'm in charge. I mean, whether we all want to admit it or not, we're control freaks about the self. So I mean, giving up ultimate control and saying, God, you're in charge of whatever I do. You're in charge of my heart, my soul, my eyes to the world, and what goes from me out there. I mean, that's a flesh stomping its feet, like Veruca Salt gone, no.
Surrender is not really a flesh move.
Exactly.
Yeah. Very good. I mean, that's very true. And it because our flesh reacts against that idea of submit, surrender, faith, it changes our flesh, colors what we think about God. God is a dictator, and he's, cruel and mean, and he's thoughtless and heartless and distant and cold and uncaring and callous. What's happening in my life, this can't possibly be good, because why? I don't understand how it could be. So it can't be because you don't understand how it could be? Is that what we believe? Because I don't understand how it could be good, it can't be good. Have you ever found something that you thought, this is going to be horrible, this is going to be bad, I can't imagine this is going to be good, and then found out later, oh, that actually was a really good thing? Has that ever happened to you? Anybody here that ever happened to? A couple people? I mean, it's not that uncommon an experience, and yet we act like it's this unbelievable experience that I wouldn't be able to think how something could be good, and then later on it would turn out as it was. That can't happen, because I'm so smart. Right? And I've never been fooled like that before, except 20 times. So that could not possibly be. But that's how our flesh operates, and that's how our flesh acts. So this image of God charging in to rescue. Why? Why does God charge in? What does Paul say in verse 4? Why does God charge in to rescue the devastatingly lost that we were and that other people are? Because why? Because of his great love for us. Not his love, his great love. And we start to get Paul emphasizing how immense, unknowably immense God is. And he starts to do that by focusing on some of these characteristics that John later tells us God is love. So he says, why did God do this? You could ask that question a lot of different ways. Why did God save me? Why did God care enough about me to see my problem and not just judge and pour out what I deserved, but to come and make a way through his Son so that I could be saved? Why would he include me? Why? Paul told you. Because of God's immense love. Because God loves you like that. That is incredible, isn't it? Go ahead.
He destroyed the temple. He destroyed this temple.
The temple of Jesus' body.
In us.
Yeah.
And the old goes out and the new comes in.
Yes. Yes. So God makes us new like that at his cost. We get the benefit. He paid the cost. The old me is gone. The new me has come. Why? But God, because of his great love for us. Sometimes life throws you some curveballs and you're like, I don't know. I don't know if I can trust God. I don't know what God's doing. I don't know if God's good. All of those questions can be answered when you look back at this and see God saved me and God planned my salvation because of his great love. If you want to know, can you trust God? If you want to know, is God good? Look back at this. But God, because of his great love for us, because of his unknowably immense love for you, however much you think God loves you, however much you think he has good intention and kindness and goodwill and wants your life to be redeemed completely, however much you think it, he wants it more. Immeasurably more. So you think if you took tonight and you just laid in bed and took an hour and tried to think, how big is the love of God? However big you come up with, God is immeasurably bigger than that. Not 2 times bigger, 4 times bigger, 8 times bigger. Immeasurably bigger than that's how big his love is for you. And so when we talk about salvation is God's masterpiece to show us who he is. It is why Jesus says you can sum up the whole commandments in love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. Why? Because God's love is expressed in salvation and it is planted as a seed in his people, so we are to love others as he has loved us because God's love is what drove the whole thing. Romans chapter 8, it comes off of God who did not spare his son but freely gave him up for us all. How will he hold back any good thing for those who are his? And then he says, for I am convinced that nothing can separate us from the love of God. Not death. He starts off right there. Not death. Death can't separate us from... Death separates you from everything, doesn't it? Everything you know and understand, death separates you from, doesn't it? What life is like, what people are like, who you know, how you interact with people, what matters, what doesn't matter, what feels good, what doesn't. Everything is done for you at death, except what Paul said is one of the things that isn't done at death is the love of God for you. Nothing can separate us from the love of God. Not height, nor depth, nor angels, or principalities. Not life, nor death. Whew. That's the love of God for you. And so when Paul's starting to talk here, he makes it very clear that our circumstance and situation wasn't a minor problem. It wasn't a misdemeanor. It wasn't like, well, that was kind of bad. I mean, you do a lot of good stuff, but that was a little bad. Please try not to do that again. That's not the picture Paul gives about us before Christ. The picture is devastatingly lost, dead in our transgressions and sins, unable to find any way out of our problem. But God, because of his great love for us, made a way. God, because he loves you like that. So what I'd love for you to take from tonight through this week is to be impressed again at how God loves us. Oh, how he loves us. More than we have dwelt on in our heads, more than we have lived, more than we've talked about and discussed, more than we've considered and processed, more than we've sung about. God's love for us is overwhelmingly more than that. And what he's saying in this passage to us about it is, God is the mover in salvation. He is the one who came up with the idea that yes, mankind turned from me. They rebelled and they went their own way. They were fallen, they were lost, they were hopelessly lost. And everything good that I've given them, they have an ability to twist it to evil, to wicked, to rebellion, to darkness, to sin. Every single thing that I give them that's good, they can turn it to that. But I love them. And I will make a way for them to be redeemed, to know my love. These terms that Paul piles up in this passage, mercy, love, grace, kindness, gift. You want a little biography of who God is, the character and nature of God? When you read this, pull those words out. Because of his great love for us, God who is rich in mercy, God out of the riches of his grace, he has given it to us. It is a gift of God. It is by grace we have been saved through. These words are just piled up to say, this is who God is. The enemy will come and your flesh will come and tell you God isn't this. God isn't good. God isn't faithful. God isn't gracious. God isn't concerned. God isn't caring, because your life tells you that. I had somebody say to me about a month ago, I asked God to heal me and he didn't. So I don't know how God, I got some questions about God right now. I'm just living in doubt. That's real, right? If you're with cancer laying in a bed and you ask God to heal you and he doesn't, and instead cancer grows and your life is coming, that's like what you're seeing, what you're experiencing. So then we have this choice. Is God good or not? Is God good because I get how he's good? Or is God good because he's good because he saved me? And that's the issue settled on that. I may not ever know how he's good in this, but I know he is good in this. That's the kind of faith that we are given as our birthright. The kind of hope that can weather any storm. We're going to talk Sunday as we start up a study in Exodus about living in a hard land. We're going to talk about the people of God whose story does not start off well in Exodus at all. And we kind of brush over it because most of us have been in Sunday school and seen the flannel graphs where Moses lifts up a stick and the waters part and they go through and it all turns out all right. It's all fine. You know, every story starts off with something bad and then you just move past it. Except when you're living in it, you don't just move past it. And so that's what we're going to look at on Sunday. Because many, many believers are living in a hard land. And they think that living in a hard land means living without hope. It means living heavy, living dark, living crushed, living discouraged. The invitation is, I think, for us to grow to the place where we understand who God is, even in the hard land, even in the dark place. That I am not deciding day by day who God is. I've already seen who God is. He saved me. Because of his great love for me. He's already shown me who he is. And I'm going to believe who he is. And then we're going to face whatever comes. Because the worst this world can do is kill me. And when the world kills me, when this life is over, what is that? What has God done with that? Hallelujah. I am set free. I am glorified. I am with Christ. I am set free. That's the worst the world can do, is set you free from all this pain. That's the worst they can do. That's why Paul says in Philippians 1, for me to live is Christ. As long as I'm here, I'm about Christ. But to die is gain. And I'm torn. I don't know which one I want, because it's better for you if I'm here so I can teach you and lead you. But for me to leave is far better. I think Christians have lost that our hope is not this world. The way that the enemy gets us, he gets us stuck in our hope of this world. And so when God doesn't answer my prayer for this world and someone dies or someone's situation is hard or untenable or suffering, oh God, how can you be good? And God's like, excuse me? First off, do you think I've asked you to bear something that I didn't go in and experience myself? I sent my son to die. So I get it. I know how hard that is. But you know that's not the end. You know that's a moment, right? James 4 says this life is a vapor, appears for a moment and then vanishes away. Can anyone testify to that? appears for a moment, and then vanishes away. Life just whizzes by, doesn't it? So if life is a vapor and it's here for a moment and gone, and what we are promised is that God will accomplish redemption and we will experience complete redemption forever in eternity, how can we get stuck in God? How can you be good because of what happened here? You know how it is? The first 3 centuries, the church exploded when it wasn't allowed to be. Like it was illegal to be the church. You shouldn't be the church. Mostly because it was all right for you to add more gods, but it wasn't all right for you to tell people there's only one God, and if you're not worshiping the right one, you're lost forever. That didn't fly in that culture. There was a lot of trouble to that. So that didn't fly. And so for 3 centuries, this flourished in persecution. And the reason it flourished in persecution is because they believed that their hope was not this life. They believed that there was a promised land for them. But for us, this life is pretty good, or can be. We don't have where are we going to eat, and are we going to die tomorrow because people will put us to death? We don't have that. So this life is pretty easy. It's pretty good. I'm not saying it's easy like everything in your life is perfect, but I'm saying relative to history of mankind, we've got it pretty easy. You know? I was just saying to the young adults last night, this idea of going to the grocery store and picking up chicken in a package that's already cut for you and everything like that, this is relatively new in the history of the world. You know that? Maybe like 60 years old. Past that, you didn't go to the grocery store and pick up chicken. You went out and got a chicken and killed it. You know what I mean? Like now it's like, that came from a live. The kids are waking up to like, oh, that's actually was a living thing. Oh, I don't know if I can eat it anymore. Because we're so distant from the grime of life we just take it for granted. Now there's commercials of not only would we like have the chicken cut up for you, we'll dice it into little pieces so you don't even have to touch it. You just put it in the frying pan because it's too gross. Like how delicate are we nowadays that I can't take a knife out and chop up the chicken before I put it in the pan? But that's where we are. We're so distant from the ugly, and we don't even know we are. And some of that is why it's so challenging for us to live not for this world, because we're so comfortable in this world. Relatively speaking, we are so comfortable in this world. And we have such high hopes for the potential of this life to pay off. But let's get it straight, believers. This life doesn't pay off. This life doesn't pay off. Nothing about this life pays off. Only if I live in this life for the next life does it pay off. If I say this life isn't about this life is about that, that's when Jesus says in Matthew 6, that's when I store up treasure in heaven, not treasure on earth. Right? What does this life do? This life makes you run and run. You're faced with sickness and disease and betrayal and evil at every turn. Am I exaggerating this? It is hard and heavy and stressful, and we're successful in America, so now we're running, and people don't have time to come to Bible study. They don't have time to come to church because they got to work, because they got to pay the bills for the big house. Like, run and run and run and run. This world and this life doesn't pay off. And in the end, let's say you survive for 80 years. Your reward is dementia and death. Like, right? Isn't it? Like, congratulations, you survived, you made it through. Now, you get to forget who everybody is, and you get to die. Oh, yay. Don't we act like this world is going to pay off? Oh, God, well, this and this. Your hope isn't here. God loved you. His great love for you was too small to fit into this life. So his love for you is so big that it's going to take eternity for you to recognize and revel in all that God has given you because of his great love. You were lost, and that lostness was going to bleed out into eternity. But God, because of his great love for you, stepped in and said, now I want you to understand, we're going to weather this life, but then I'm going to deliver you to redemption that never ends. And if we would live for forever, how much later would this be? You know? Like, I remember senior year of college and senior year of high school, we had this thing called senioritis. We were almost done, and we were done with this. Like senior year of college, I took a couple courses, like because I'm like weird, so I took a couple courses that I thought would be interesting, like Hebrew and family counseling. Like I took some weird stuff, but I didn't have to take it, and I wasn't stressed about it because I'm getting out. All of my majors almost done. I had a couple classes left in my major, and none of them were really hard. They were pretty simple classes. I was like done. And by the way, I was going to marry this amazing girl in about 6 months. So, and I had a job lined up. I'm done. I wasn't worried about who liked me at college. The experience of college. I was done. I'm like looking forward to the life that's coming. What if we believers lived not about this life, but about that one? What if we believed that there was a hope that absolutely dwarfed any hope this life could offer? And anything this life offers that's good, I'll enjoy that, but it's not my hope. Because there's a hope that's coming that is so much better. And I had like a little bit of senioritis about this life and said, can't wait to get there. And I can't wait to take as many as I can with me and to point as many as I can with me towards the hope that we have so that you can live in this life like there is of that life. Because that's what Paul's talking about here. God's great love revealed by the way that he saved us. Isn't that awesome? All right, so I lied. We didn't even get through verse 4. But we didn't even get off the first page. But the hits continue. Because the rest of that verse, God who is rich in mercy. It's the same thing, but now it's about mercy. It's the same concept. The word rich, and then later on, he might show, verse 7, the incomparable riches of his grace. When Paul uses the word riches, or rich, he's, especially in relation to God, he's using it to describe an inexhaustible supply. God who is rich in mercy, he has an inexhaustible supply of mercy. Never can run out. That's a lot of mercy. I think I've seen a lot of sin, like a lot of sin. So much that I feel like the sin that I know about, I've had it. How about you? Like, have you ever gotten worn out with all of the wicked in the world around you? There are times in life where you're just like, ah. So I run out of mercy. God never runs out of mercy. And he's been at this a while. Thousands of years of mankind blowing it and making messes and doing horrible things to mankind and this world. God who is rich in mercy. This mercy never runs out. For us who believe, what does that mean? That God, not only does God have great love for us, but he's rich in mercy. What does that mean for us? That God is rich in mercy. Mercy is, what is it? God forgiving what we've done wrong. God saying, mercy is, you blew it, and there's a price to blowing it, and you deserve that price, that punishment. Mercy says, but I'm not going to give it to you. It is well acknowledged that you deserve it, but I'm not going to give it to you. That's mercy. It's mercy. God is rich in mercy. There's an inexhaustible supply of mercy. Have you ever needed God's mercy? Have you ever run out of mercy before God? For yourself? It calls us to a faith in the goodness, in the love, in the mercy of God. My need to not carry around my guilt is not because I shouldn't have guilt. It's because God is rich in mercy. And I have faith in what he told me about himself. He's rich in mercy for me. So I run to the cross, and I thank God that he forgives, that he loves, and that it never runs out for me. It should. If it were based on me deserving it, it should. But it doesn't. Ever. Wow, are we blessed? God is rich in mercy.